We have the great honor to have Ms. Shannon O'Hara in Romania. She is not only a trainer in Access Consciousness, but actually the founder of some special courses in Access Consciousness, like Talk to the Entities, and she was raised within the energy and the philosophy of Access Consciousness from the beginning, being the stepdaughter of the founder of this wonderful knowledge. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
I want to invite you a little bit to talk about yourself and what you have learned during the years, because you are very privileged to grow next with such a person like Gary Douglas.
Yeah, so I had the honor of growing up with Gary Douglas, and he started bringing forward the tools of access when I was about 12 years old. And I had my bars run then, and the bars, for those of you guys that don't know, or for people who are watching who don't know, are what sort of like the foundation tool in access.
ABC.
It's the absolute ABCs of access. And so the bars make no sense when you hear what we call it, but when you have them run, you sort of get what it is more. It's a light touch on the head, but it's really dynamic. But anyways, I had my bars run when I was 12, and I was like, whatever, that's weird. I don't really want to do that. And then I was a tortured teenager for many years. And all the time, Gary was continuing to evolve and develop and expand access. And then when I was in my late teens, I was in really bad shape. I was really heavily depressed, and I actually was suicidal. And Gary sort of tricked me into using the tools of access and getting my bars run, because I didn't really want to do the weird stuff my dad was doing, but I was in so much psychological pain that I just had to do something or die. And so I started using the tools of access bit by bit, and bit by bit I started being happier in ways that I didn't even really acknowledge. And I got really into access because I preferred feeling better than horrible, like I had felt for so many years. And in my early 20s, the thing that access does is it gives us more of us. And what most of us don't realize is how many parts and pieces of ourselves that we cut off to fit in, or to not be judged, to not be weird. And what access does is it starts giving you access to all those parts and pieces again. And one of the things that I had tried to shut off and make go away was my awareness of the spirit world. And like we all know, when you talk about spirits, it brings up so much weird stuff for people, They're either heavily significant, or they think it's evil or witchcraft or whatever. But for me, being aware of ghosts was a natural part of my being.
Have you saw the movie Constantine?
I don't think I have, actually. No.
It is a movie where there are two ladies who grow with this kind of gifts.
Yeah.
One embraces it, one denies it.
Right, okay.
And during the movie, the ones who denies it recover it in order to find something about the other one. So at some point you said in your website, you cannot actually erase these abilities. You can just
go unconscious to them. Suppress them.
Put it somehow.
Yeah. So in Access, we talk about that you can't actually make an ability go away. And what few people want to believe is that being aware is actually an ability. A lot of people see awareness as a disability or something that they want to get away from. And especially being aware of the spirit world, that's not something that we're given a lot of empowerment or positive energy about. And so in Access, we talk about you can't actually make an ability go away. You can only sort of suppress it, repress it, use drugs to make it go away, use alcohol to make it go away, etc.
Or other distractions.
Other distractions, basically going unconscious. And so what I gained access to when I was 21 was all this, literally one day. I was home in my apartment in Southern California, which is where I'm from, and I was a very small apartment. It was maybe 2 times the size. The living room was maybe 2 times the size of this stage, small. And the living room filled with so many ghosts that I literally couldn't see the other side of the room. It was so foggy, and I knew it was entities, and I was like, ah! And I called my dad. I was like, oh my God, there's so many entities in my house. I'm really freaked out. And he's like, honey, that's great. You know, he's always been so different, and he himself is aware of entities. And what few people realize is that access was actually something that Gary channeled, and it's really entities that helped us find the tools of access.
So actually it's not something engineered by a man, it's somehow revealed?
I would say it was a cooperation between a man and many ghosts, many beings, because it's definitely been engineered and grown and substantiated by Gary. But the thing that's so amazing that I love about life is that we're not actually alone here on the planet. We're accompanied by many energies and many beings.
Much more than human beings, would you say?
I would say many more than just human beings. So there's like the Homo sapien species, the animal species, and the spirit species.
What change in me if I become aware of this? How my life will be touched and changed?
I can't actually say what's going to change in you. All I do know is that in order to not be aware of anything, you have to go unconscious. And so when you start getting access to more awareness, including awareness of the spirit world, you're basically going to be getting more conscious. And so that has all sorts of ramifications that so few of us really have a reference point for understanding.
So what you are saying, in a way, if I understand correctly, is that we are able to see in a natural way this spiritual world, but we choose at some level not to see it.
That is exactly what I'm saying. That is exactly. It's like all babies are aware, especially of ghosts. It's like so many of us who have children and even, have seen our babies talking to something that we can't see or looking at something that we can't see. And really that awareness is taught out of us by lack of education and by people who don't really want to be aware themselves of that stuff. Because so many of us, to be perfectly honest, are hugely miseducated about ghosts. We're taught they're bad and wrong and creepy and scary. Don't talk to them, they're bad. But in truth, they're just like people. Some of them are annoying, some of them are amazing, some of them are unconscious and lost. And so the really cool thing is when you start actually working with your awareness of the spirit world, your life becomes a lighter, brighter place because you're no longer at the effect of entities who just simply might need to be cleared.
What do you mean by that, to be cleared?
So one of the interesting things that I discovered after years of developing Talk to the Entities through my own exploration, facilitating classes, doing sessions, was that dealing with the spirit world is not very complex. You really only ever do three things. You either clear entities, communicate with entities, or receive from entities. And in my own personal experience, like 85% of the spirits that I ever come across walking down the street, in houses, in dreams, in other people's houses and lives, literally just need to be cleared. It's the weirdest thing. I thought that if somebody died, they'd become more conscious or they'd have like all of this like power or something.
Enlightenment somehow.
Enlightenment. And it was so strange to discover that basically, for the most part, most people's personalities and consciousness didn't shift at all when they lost their body. If somebody was lost or unconscious or not very smart when they had a body, they were very much like that without a body. And so I'd have these beings come into my house and I'd be like, do you know you don't have a body anymore? And they'd go, oh. And then they'd realize that their body had died and that they had to make another choice. So for me, that was huge news that spirits weren't enlightened. Not all of them, at least.
I imagine you are familiar with that Hollywood show with the Hollywood Medium or something like that.
Well,
that
there's
young
been
person
so
does.
many TV shows with mediums, and which is actually, I think, a great sign of the times. My favorite one was his name was John Edward, and he was had a show called Crossing Over when I was like in late teens, early 20s. My dad used to like leave him on the television so that I could see that there was somebody else out there who was publicly stating that he was aware of ghosts and it wasn't weird and creepy, and he was actually becoming famous and wealthy for it.
But when you are referring to ghosts, you mean like spirits that died as a person, as a body, and remained around the livings?
Well,
is it
a
the
good
only
question.
choice, or?
It's a great question, actually. When I say ghosts and spirits, I am sort of talking about the same thing. When I talk about entities, it's slightly different, because what we actually do a lot in Talk to the Entities in the curriculum is there's lots of special classes for different kinds of spirits. Like, we've got a class for spirits of the earth, nature spirits. We have classes on how to clear houses and spaces, which is sort of a very unique, specific way of doing things. And when I'm talking about entities, I don't just mean people that used to have bodies, I mean beings of all sorts of shapes and sizes and frequencies.
So actually the spiritual world is composed by many type of entities.
Yes.
Of different frequencies, some good, some bad.
Correct. Well, the spirit world is just like the world of people or the world of plants or animals. Some are medicinal, some are poisonous, some are kind, some are terrifying. It's exactly the same.
So is it close to what religions try to understand by angels and demons in a way?
I think religion is an interesting conversation, because what religion did is it sort of condensed it down to three kinds of spirits: angels, demons, and the Holy Spirit. Really and truly, there's so many more than three.
Which is called actually the Holy Ghost.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and so in a way, yes, there's an awareness of that, but what religion has also done is made wrong those that have communication with spirits. However, it's a natural ability that everybody has. Some have it more than others.
They burn people.
Exactly. They made it really unpopular to talk to ghosts. In fact, they made it dangerous. But what's so cool is, in this day and age, like, the thing is, that time's over, and we can actually become very influential in the world and extremely wealthy and famous for being this kind of difference, which I'm very excited about.
So, what did this changed in your life? You are speaking around the world,
Yeah.
and doing one-to-one
Sessions.
Mm-hmm. But how this changed your life? Can you still be a normal person? Like,
That's an interesting question. I feel like it's such a complex question. How it's changed my life is I had no reference point for what was possible with this until I started. And I have been really committed to developing Talk to the Entities and becoming more aware and inviting people to this possibility for close to 15 years. So I've got a lot of ground underneath me that I've walked. And it's been more rewarding than I ever thought was possible. I've been blown away at the level of consciousness and transformation and joy and ease. It's like, the thing that really keeps me going is that people come and do Talk to the Entities classes, and they leave and they give me feedback like their life is a million times easier and lighter and brighter, and that voice they always heard in their head went away, and all of the sort of the impacts and the effects that spirit awareness can have when you're not conscious of it, when you add consciousness to it, it revolutionizes your life. And no one ever talks about that. It's not I feel like I'm way ahead of my time, and this is something that people are going to be more even interested in and comfortable with in hundreds of years to come. So for me, it's created this magical world. And in addition to showing me the world, I travel all over the place, and Talk to the Entities has become very popular in ways that I never thought it could be. So it's given back to me tremendously. The being normal question is an interesting one. I think first we have to ask the question is like, whose version of normal? You know?
Yes, because it's something relative. Even the psychologists say normal it's a media of different people and put some...
I definitely,
behavior.
and I know that this has been true for many other people.
But what I meant is, can you keep a normal life, so to say? That what
I do not have a normal life. I have an extraordinary life. My life is so much more fun, so much more wealthy, so much freer, so much more diverse. I'm not normal. I'm a very high achiever of fun.
This is great. In that movie that I mentioned, Constantine, there is a line that says that he warned the girl before she regained her ability to see the entities.
Yeah?
And he said, be aware, you see them, they see you.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody activates these abilities, would that person be more visible, so to say, more relevant for the entities?
No, they see you even if you don't see them.
So it's not like a danger to see them from that point of view.
Well, that's one of the, I think that dangerous thing is one of the, it's like the propaganda that we've all been sold about the spirit world. It's like, I was afraid as well when I started, but what I discovered was like, it was so totally not something I needed to be afraid of. In fact, I found tons of incredible spirits that were fun and contributed, and if I had stayed in that danger zone, I would have never gotten that. And it's like, whose fear or whose danger of being aware of spirits are people functioning from? Is it even their point of view, or is it something they've been taught or that they bought?
When people gain access to some kind of tool, any tool that is magical in a way, they try to use it, to manipulate it, to gain some advantages.
One of the interesting thing about the human race is so many people can be horrible. And so it's like we can use these tools for good or we could use these tools for bad, and it's really somebody's choice. We all have access to the tool. It's the hand that holds it that determines the outcome.
What I am curious is that you do in any way filter the people who gain at least some kind of training, or anybody has access if he or she chooses.
No, one of the foundations of access is no exclusion.
Okay.
So even if people are horrible, they're still invited. No, there's no filtering process because this isn't a significant hierarchy. It's like, truth is, if people don't like ease, joy, and glory, they're not really going to hang around access. And I've got, right now, I think we've got like 150 certified Talk to the Entities facilitators around the world. And I used to worry, like, what if they use this information to do bad things? And the thing is,
They didn't.
well, even if they did, they learned. And I was like, is this really what you want to create? And I can't control, none of us can control what other people are going to do. And I also can't let other people's restrictions dictate the greatness that's possible.
Because in ancient times, there was this kind of esoteric philosophy to keep this kind of knowledge only for the few with some...
Well, the funny thing is that if a lot of people can't hear it anyways, so even if you give them the tool, they might not even recognize they have it.
So what can bring us as value if we became aware in talking with this entity? Can we learn from them? Can we gain information, energy? Is the world become larger?
I would never say that you should open up to entities because you're going to benefit from it. I would say you should open up to entities because you're going to access more consciousness. And if you're interested in consciousness, then go for it. But if you don't value consciousness or even understand what it is, then keep having pain, I guess.
So don't do it to gain some human values, like more money, more cars, more beautiful women.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing that
Or
a
men.
lot of people want to talk, a lot of people have used entities as a way of having power over others, and that's absolutely not what this is. This is to empower everybody to know that they know. And it's like people doing bad things with entities is such a small part of the whole recipe of consciousness that it's really almost irrelevant. What is relevant is that we can clear, communicate, and receive so much more of us in ways that most people don't have reference points for.
But if you can perceive the spiritual world, for sure you perceive the human spirit different, in a different way. The persons, the real persons. How this...
Sometimes I actually question if I was talking to a person or a ghost. Sometimes I went, wait, is that a person? So a lot of the times there isn't a huge difference for me. However, everybody perceives differently.
What I'm curious is that besides the appearance of a person or a ghost, if you can have direct access to speak with their consciousness or perceive things about a person, past, future, subconscious.
Well, consciousness isn't subjective. Consciousness is really everything. So, I mean, one of the interesting things is when people start being more aware, they're more aware of everything. And that's sometimes overwhelming for people because they hear people's thoughts more, they can perceive people's bodies more, they can hear all the ghosts talking in that haunted building down the street, which most people think is a wrongness. It's like, because it's not normal, but it's absolutely a strongness that I would love to see people stepping into more.
It's your first time in Romania?
My first time this lifetime.
And what will be able the people attending to this course to learn, to transform in themselves?
Tonight we're doing an introduction, so I'll probably run a lot of processes, which is the access processes. We'll probably clear a lot of ghosts and demons. I'll answer questions. I'll probably make people uncomfortable with their walls and barriers to being aware, because a lot of people come with a lot of walls and barriers, whilst having their eyes peeking over the top going like, I'm sort of interested in something different. So we'll see what happens in the introduction, and then over the weekend we'll do the beginning class, and that has a manual, and it's a lot about clearing through the access processes a lot of the points of view, the energies, the stories that you've bought, created or taken on from others that limit your perception and don't allow you to have access to what you're aware of easily. And then people will learn how to clear entities, communicate with entities, and receive.
What I'm curious about, and we are going toward the end of our interview, and I'm very, very thankful for this opportunity, are the towns, the big towns, more crowded, so to say, with the entities and ghosts? Do ghosts tend to be more present where people are, or we can find the same number of situations like in the desert, in the mountains, at the sea, and so on?
Older cities definitely have more people entities, definitely. That was one of the kind of gifts for me growing up in California, because to be honest, it's actually not a hugely entity-ridden place. Like places like Paris and Rome and Jerusalem and places with really long histories have a lot more what I would call like stuck entities. The kind of beings that you run into in nature are different. A forest has different entities than a city, for sure.
Thank you very much for this interview, and it is such a privilege, and I hope I will see you again in Romania.
Thank you very much.